Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's The Legend of Zelda, the second quest brought to us by Nintendo. The original Legend of Zelda was not only one of the most iconic games of all time, one of the coolest things about it was, after completing the game, you unlocked a second quest. You could unlock this by putting in your name as Zelda at the start menu, and go right to that second quest. But if you were one of those kids who did that, you would probably find yourself having a little bit of trouble, as the second quest is definitely a lot more challenging than the first one. So here we go, picking up right where my last Play It Through left off, as we move into the second quest of Legend of Zelda. The overworld map overall isn't changed too much, it's the locations of everything that definitely has been changed in the second quest. Just like the first quest though, I won't be doing things the same exact way, though unfortunately I'm not going to be getting the powered up sword at the very start of the game like I did in that first quest, due to the fact it's a lot tougher actually to get the heart pieces in this game. Due to things that are going to happen much later on, I won't end up with a full set of hearts at the end of the game, though I will collect every single heart. We'll get more into that as we go a little bit farther in. The controls for the second quest are the exact same as the first quest. Nothing really changes in that department. The items that you're collecting and using, sub-weapons and all, are pretty much the same as well. Prices for the items that you have to buy are also the same. The shops have been completely changed, as anything you go inside, whether it's a staircase or a cave, will be different than what it was in the first quest. While the enemies on the outside map haven't changed too much, there are newer and tougher enemies inside some of the dungeons. You're also going to be fighting the tougher later dungeon creatures a lot earlier in the second quest. My goal at the beginning of this is going to be collecting enough rupees in order to buy a few things. One of the things I will be buying this time around that I didn't buy in the first quest was the large shield. I'll also be buying the ring, the arrows, bombs if I do need them, as well as the food. And in this quest, you actually need to buy not one, but two of the food item. You'll have to use it in two separate dungeons, unlike what we had to do the first time around. Now I will be utilizing the money-making game to a degree early on. There's also going to be two instances throughout the game where I will actually edit a little bit and fast forward after I get done grinding for rupees, as I'll need a certain amount of rupees in order to buy certain items. The first thing that I will be buying is the candle. Just like last time, the candle is used not only to light up rooms, but also to burn bushes, and you can find plenty of secrets by burning bushes in the game. One of the reasons also I'm going to have to grind for rupees is not only that I have to buy an extra item, this time around a second set of meat, but also there's less rupees to find on the overworld map. The big difference is that the secret locations, for example the one I'm entering now, which will give me a set of 30 rupees, which will definitely help me out this early on, instead of having two locations like this that had 100 rupees in them, there's only one in the second quest on the main map. And because of that, I have to grind more for rupees, either using the game, or running around and killing enough enemies until they drop rupees. Now one of the other best places to build up your rupee count is actually the graveyard. Something that I didn't do at all during the first run of the game is mess with the graveyard and use that in order to build up rupee count and get other items. For example, you can actually keep getting the guineas to respawn, or the ghost, from the tombstones, defeat all of them, and when you do so, there's a good chance you're going to gain a lot of rupees by doing so. Usually at least one blue and at least 5 or 6 regular orange ones that are flashing, in order to build up that count, and repeating the process on each of the screens in the graveyard itself is a great way to build up that count. Like I did last time, I'm running around and finding a lot of the secret locations early on and grabbing and building up that rupee count. Like I said, I'm going to be buying that extra shield, as well as I'm needing to buy all those other items. This is probably the biggest grind about the second quest. The second quest is a lot tougher when it comes to finding these places, as well as being able to buy all these items. Now, of course, granted, we don't need to purchase the large shield, but it definitely does help, even more so in the second quest than it did in the first quest. Without really using a guide, I would find it really tough to find the locations of all of the large heart pieces in this game. Also, like last time, I won't be buying the bomb upgrade, but there is 2 locations for the bomb upgrade in this game, so you can definitely build up that bomb count up to a total of 16 bombs, though it still costs 100. The other thing that's been added to this one, and I mentioned it briefly earlier on, was that you get to a couple of rooms in the game where you either have to pay 50 rupees in order to advance, or you have to give up a heart. And not just give up that you take damage, no, you completely give up one of your large hearts in order to enter that room. Like I said, and because of that, instead of going around and trying to grind even more rupees to pay that off, I will instead just give up the heart and move on, since I'll still have 15 other hearts by the end. Even stopping by the 10 rupee locations is definitely beneficial to help me out. Now we're going to head over to the graveyard. I'm not going to be grinding rupees this time around, as we'll be traveling to the graveyard a few times in this run, but my first goal is actually to get the first heart piece, as that's the location of where it is. When starting up the second quest and only having the few hearts that I do, you do want to be careful because the enemies here are pretty tough. You end up getting hit by one of those enemies that throw the swords at you, or even running into the ghost, you're going to take a lot of damage, including being killed pretty quickly with 1 or 2 hits at most. Pushing this tombstone on a screen we didn't even need to travel to in the first quest, we're able to find the first large heart. From here, when we go right and enter the location of what was Dungeon 6 in the first quest, instead, it's another one of these secret rupee locations. My next stop is going to be going up into the mountains itself and grabbing the power bracelet so I can push a couple of the large rocks on the overworld during the game. The location of the power bracelet is the same as it was during the first quest, moving the statue out of the way in order to actually pick it up. And because of this, I can come back over here, push the rock on the left side, and go into the mini road path. Here I'm going to select the one on the far left side so it puts me back into this forest area, go up really quickly just to replenish my health, and show off one of the fairy lakes in the game, or fairy fountains I guess you could call them, like they are in the other Legend of Zelda games, and then continue on my journey. I know it's been a lot of grinding already with rupees, but it's finally time to enter the first dungeon of the game. Level 1 is located in the same spot that it was located in first quest. The items that you end up getting from the dungeons changes up, and of course, the layouts of the dungeons are completely different. The Legend of Zelda Second Quest dungeons are actually letters, or at least weird shapes. The first dungeon that we're traveling in is actually in the shape of the letter E. It's kind of an odd choice to do the letters for these, but you'll see it when I pick up the map. And I will still be picking up maps and most of the compasses throughout this run. The only ones I may not pick up are ones that are going to be really out of the way or require me to have items I may not currently have at the time. In this room, killing all the Stalfos will grant us the compass, which you can see is in the upper right corner. Also, bosses are different in dungeons. And you will be fighting a lot of the Gleeoks during this run. Much more so than you fought in the first one. The multi-headed dragons make quite a few appearances. Being sure to kill all the Goriyas in this room will give us our first set of bombs, which will definitely help us out. Unfortunately, I entered the right room. I didn't need to do that, as we'll actually be entering it from the opposite direction in just a few moments. In this room, we just gotta wipe out all the slimes before going through, even though we have a key currently, take them all out and pick up the blue rupee. In the next room, you're met with, well, the first boss that we have to deal with, and that's a Dodongo. Now, something I didn't mention in the other game is that there's actually more than one way to kill the Dodongos. I'll be using the simple and safe method of just making them eat 2 bombs each time. But there actually is more you can do to them. If you actually put a bomb in front of them that it doesn't eat, and it ends up blowing up, it will cause them to start coughing. Thus, Dodongo dislike smoke. And if you attack them at that point, you can actually kill the Dodongos and take them out. Another cool thing that you can do is if you feed them 1 bomb, then immediately place the second bomb so they don't eat it, but instead do the smoke trick, and then kill them, you will end up getting bomb drops every single time you kill them. Definitely useful if you're trying to make sure that your bomb count is still high. It's a little bit difficult on the timing to do so, so most of the time I just kill them with the 2 bomb method the default way, but I wanted to make sure that I did mention these. After getting the map and compass, I travel back down to the bottom area with the keys that I have, and go through this room in order to travel into the next one. Now, we don't have any keys, but we definitely need a key, so what we're going to do is kill all the Wall Masters. This is something we really didn't do in the first quest, summoning the Wall Masters to actually appear, then defeating every one until they stop appearing, and then an item will drop, or you'll get the ability to push blocks, like in many of the other rooms and dungeons. Over here to the left, we have to battle some Goriyas, and after defeating them, you'll then kind of be wondering, where exactly am I supposed to travel? We still have to go another room up in order to make it to the actual boss. But that's where, of course, the bombs we picked up come in handy as we blow up the wall and get right to the first boss, Aquamanthus. Take him out just like you did before, either dropping a bomb to do a lot of damage, or just take him out with a sword. We didn't have a whole lot of bombs left, well, in fact, none by destroying that last wall, so I just take him out with a sword, go through, and pick up the first Triforce piece. Overall, Dungeon 1, not too much tougher, but trust me, it definitely changes up after we leave here. Since we didn't have enough hearts in order to get the white sword right away, without going into one of the dungeons first, I now have 5 hearts, so I'm gonna go pick that up on the mountains. Travel along just like before, and thankfully the white sword is still in its original location that it was during the first quest, but the magical sword, the second sword that you need 12 hearts in order to pick up, unfortunately has changed. Its location is pretty tough the first time around figuring out exactly where. Then again, the graveyard in the first quest is relatively tough to figure out. My next goal is now actually to travel over to the right of just where we are, but unfortunately that'll just lead to that looping path where you have to go up many different times in order to get to the location of dungeon number 5 in the first quest, but there's no dungeon there now. My goal is actually to go right of that, where the money-making game from the tree, then you'll see it in a few seconds, just like it was there in the first quest. However, above it, going through the wall, which we had to in order to find a secret, we're going to be going through in order to find the shop that holds the blue ring. In order to grab that blue ring, I will be grinding a tiny bit of rupees, using enemies, as well as using the money-making game. Heading right over from this screen is the location of the game, and once I have enough rupees, I'll be going to buy the blue ring. After I've earned enough, we're now going to head through the wall just north of the location of that shop and grab the blue ring. It still costs, unfortunately, 250 rupees, which cripples our money. But since it does really boost our defense and we're definitely going to need it, it's worth the sacrifice and the money. You can see, heck, it takes so much money away from me, multiple streams have to be passed before the actual counter gets all the way down to now just 2 rupees out of 252 that I had. From there, I'm going to head over left to this area and push this rock in order to get to the location of the multiple choice roads again. This time, I'm going to pick the one on the right, and it ends up putting me in this area not far from the start of the game. We're now going to be heading to dungeon number 2. The location for dungeon number 2 is actually at the location of where the blue ring shop was in Quest 1. Dungeons number 1 and dungeons number 4, the one that's across the river from that little pier that we have to use the raft, are the only dungeons that actually are in the same locations as they were in the first quest. Thankfully, along this area, killing some moblins for some extra items and rupees, I'm able to get some more bombs, so we have some going into that next dungeon. From where we're at right now, we want to go right one screen, then walk up along the bank of the river, head straight up from this screen to the screen with all the movable statues, and then we're able to enter Dungeon 2. Like I mentioned before, a lot of the first dungeons, the first 5 in fact, are in the shape of letters, and level number 2 is the letter A. The second dungeon is definitely tougher than the first dungeon, but overall, it's not going to be as bad as what things are going to get to. For the first few rooms, I just kind of run through, picking up the key as I go. Watch out for the Gibdos. As you know, the Gibdos are the more advanced version of the Stalfos in the game. They pretty much move the same pattern, can also hold items, and facing them this early on is a challenge. Thankfully, getting that white sword, like we did, helps us out a bit. When we make it to this room with all of the keys going around, you want to first bomb the right wall, go through it, and pick up the item. Now with an extra key and all, we're going to take out all these keys so that the door actually opens up. One of the most annoying things in the second quest, and you'll find it in a bunch of dungeons, is even after defeating all the enemies and there's no blocks in the room, some doors just won't open up. In the next room, you battle a manhandler. Yep, amazingly enough, there's already one of these, and it's not the boss for the dungeon. With the white sword equipped, it'll take 2 hits per claw, or you can use the bomb to instantly defeat claws, and if you place it at the exact right spot, you can take out a manhandler instantly. Now, of course, I apologize for having low health. Something that can happen from time to time is with a cluster of enemies, for example, there's Darknuts down there, hitting the right one, the leader, will destroy them all. I'm not positive if this is a random effect, or I killed, like I said, the leader Darknut. Someone, of course, will know the true answer and post it down below. I apologize for that. Another thing added, though, to the second quest is invisible doors. Being able to actually walk through walls. Now, while we did this in the upper right corner of the map in order to get to that place where the blue ring is located here in the second quest, We didn't see that in dungeons. You weren't able to just walk through walls. There was all those hidden walls where you could use bombs, but in this one you're able to literally walk through the walls. So we go all the way around, go through the staircase itself, and grab the item. Once we've done so, we're now back into this room where we had the battle of the Gibdos earlier. Now we're going to take them all out. Take your time to make sure that they don't run into, especially if you're low on health like I currently am. And once they are done, head down and keep going south. Now that we've gotten some keys, we're going to open up that right locked door that we didn't open up the first time. In here, you have a lot of enemies. 2 keys, 2 Pols Voices, which of course I'm thrilled that they're back in such an early dungeon, as well as the Gibdos. Take your time with the Pols Voices especially, as they of course are going to jump right on your head, and then just battle those 2 keys. Defeating every enemy in the room, you'll grab another key. Bomb the south wall, then go through it, and have to battle a few more Dark Nuts. They'll take about 2 hits apiece while having the white sword, and maybe you'll get lucky and get a bomb drop or another item from them. Defeating them all will get you the compass. Bomb the right wall, and then go through the opening. In the next room, there's only 4 keys, but defeating them will give you a key. Just watch out for the spikes when you get close to either the right, left, or up or down walls. Next room, slimes, another key. See a pattern? We're defeating enemies and building up our key count. Not going to really help us because we're going to use a lot of keys in just a little bit in some of the other dungeons in order to kind of help things. It ends up working against me because I actually end up having to buy a key in order to go through one of the later dungeons, but for now, the key count looks pretty good. Take out those Gibdo, go down the staircase, and then you'll be teleported to the other part of the dungeon right near the boss. Here, take out some more Dark Nuts before going through the locked door to the north. The boss for dungeon number 2 is the first of the Gleeoks we have to fight. This one is one of the 2-headed ones. Thankfully, with the upgraded armor, he only does half a heart of damage per fireball, and we're able to defeat both heads, grab the big heart, and Triforce and complete level 2 of the second quest. Now that we actually got the recorder, there's a few things we can actually do with it. There's a couple of hidden locations on the map that you can use the recorder after defeating all enemies on the screen in order to get hidden staircases to appear. That will actually help us get 2 of the other big hearts, as well as enter the 6th dungeon of the game. It'll take us a little bit to travel back to the desert area, but once we do get back there, we're going to pick up the next big heart. On this screen, you have to defeat all the enemies, which can be a little bit annoying because the P-Hats, of course, want to take their time and they never want to stop or slow down enough so you can actually do damage to them. There's a few screens like this that we're going to have to deal with. I find it cool, though, that sometimes when you only have like one P-Hat left, you can actually leave the screen and come back, and another enemy will be there instead, and you can take that out, then use the recorder. It'll take a few seconds, though, for the staircase to appear, but it will, and you can grab another big heart. Before we can enter dungeon number 3, we need to build up some more money. The reason for this is because we have to buy the meat. The first dungeon that has the Grumble Grumblegoria is dungeon number 3. Use the recorder again on here in order to grab a 10-spot rupee. Well, not much, it's what we need right now. We use the bombs to grab another one of the secrets, then work our way back up to this location, and go into the shop with the blue ring. This shop has the meat for only 60, so it's definitely a bargain. I think there's one other shop that has a 60 rupee meat, but I'm not positive. Now that we have that, let's head off to Dungeon 3, which actually, interestingly enough, is in the location of Dungeon 2. The only difference is it's actually under one of the lakes in the game, which has now replaced what used to be Dungeon 2. When you do make it here, use that recorder in order to drain the lake, get the staircase to appear, and enter the third dungeon, which actually, in my opinion, is the easiest and definitely the shortest dungeon in the second quest. If you're wondering what the shape for this dungeon, well, we've had a Z and an A. This one's actually in the shape of an uppercase L, or kind of looks like a lowercase t in the end. Kind of a little bit weird since it doesn't extend very far to the right to make it kind of a larger L. You'll also notice that there's a couple of secret extra rooms on the left side of the large L shape, so it's kind of weird the way they set this up. Once we grab the map, you'll see what I mean. In this room, watch out for all the fireballs. The big shield definitely does a lot of good work blocking a ton of the shots that we're taking. Not only, of course, right now, but throughout the entire quest. Another room, more of the statues firing at you, but you want to make sure you kill all the Stalfos because they will give you a key. Next room, time to get out the meat because Grumble Grumble is back and he's hungry. Give the Goria the meat and then move on to the next room. Next up, pretty simple room, just a bunch of regular Gorias, and after dealing with all the other ones, it's not too bad here. In the room though, you get the blue boomerang. That's all you get for using the meat. So, it's one of those things where if you don't want to use the boomerang at all, you don't have to, but since I want to collect all of the dungeon items, I of course want to take them out. You noticed earlier on when I was in this room with the ropes, they now flash. You now have tougher ropes. These ones take 2 hits instead of 1, though it seems to have a high frequency of dropping the clock item to freeze them. Over here we unlock the room, and now we have to take on 3 Dodongos. Of course you're going to want to have a lot of bombs when coming here or using one of the other tricks, and once all 3 of the Dodongos are done, you get the large heart, as well as the door you can go through at the bottom. In the next room, we grab the compass, but we also have to take out all the wall masters. Doing so will allow us to push the block to get the hidden staircase to take us over to that left side, where at the location of the Triforce piece. Once we are out of the secret passageway, more Gorias await, throwing those blue boomerangs. Defeat them all, you'll open up the door just above you and go through, grab the Triforce piece. Not much of a boss, but the Dodongos were really the true boss of Dungeon 3. Now that we have 3 of the 8 Triforce pieces, it's time we're going to move right on to Dungeon 4. It'll be after Dungeon 4 that we'll have to explore around a little bit in order to grab some other items. The location for Dungeon number 4 is actually located in the set of rocks on the mountain pass that we normally would have to go up multiple times in a row in order to find a dungeon in the first quest. But we don't have to deal with that part of it now. All we have to do is push the correct rock, and the staircase appears. Just like the other 3 previous dungeons up to this point, Dungeon number 4 is shaped like a letter. This one is shaped like the letter D. This is the largest dungeon that we have dealt with thus far. This is also the first dungeon that you're going to have to pay rupees or use one of your hearts in order to make it through and get to the actual boss chamber. Also located in here is the raft item, so we're going to be working our way through and getting all of that. It also has multiple Digdoggers, Dodongos in here, as well as an Aqua Mantis. After taking out the first of the Digdoggers in this dungeon, we move to the next room after it unlocks, and they have to battle 2 blue Darknuts, 2 orange ones, as well as 2 Polis Voices. Thankfully, we still have full health entering this battle, and we're able to get some bomb drops as well, and that's always useful, especially after using most of our bombs against the 3 Dodongos in the previous dungeon. Grab the compass item that ends up dropping, so you know the location of that Triforce piece. Next room, we're going to be using the candle. Now, here introduces another new gimmick that's exclusive to the second quest, the red and blue bubbles. Normally, we're used to just the flashing bubbles, and in which case you can't use your sword for a short period of time. However, the red and blue ones work differently. The red ones will actually cause you not to be able to use your sword permanently. How do you counteract that? Well, you run into the blue bubble. This is one of the absolute most frustrating things about the second quest. If you end up getting hit, especially when you're just trying to maneuver around the room, they strategically put the red bubbles at certain locations in a room where there won't be a blue one nearby without having to backtrack through the dungeon itself. Unfortunately, here I ended up getting hit, so I can't really take these guys out at this point. Keep moving on, and I use my flame in order to take out the blob on the next screen. And here, I'm going to switch over and use the bomb item in order to bomb the north wall. Okay, thankfully once through here, another blue bubble appears, so I can use my sword finally again. Use your sword to take out the 4 Darknuts in the room, trying to do your best to avoid those red bubbles. After we've taken out all of those Darknuts, picked up some extra rupees, we're going to go through the right wall, just walk straight on through it. In the next room, there's a bunch of keys. Nothing too special. Just head south. Now, this room right here, with the block in the middle, will be a common theme. This is actually a room that you would see later on in A Link to the Past. Basically, what you have to do is push the block in the right direction so that you can access each different door. You then have to go through that door and come back into this room if you want to push the block again to a different direction and get to other parts of the same room. I know, kind of weird explanation, but you're obviously seeing what's going on. You're going to be seeing a bunch of these rooms, including the final dungeon of the game, dungeon number 9. There's actually 3 of those rooms, like, in a row, and they're a little bit difficult to navigate, but we'll be able to get through. Take out the Dodongo in this room, then in the next one, you'll have a bunch of the blue Darknuts. Just move around the best that you can, even with the fireballs coming your way. Just kind of ignore the fireballs. They will damage you at some times if you're swinging at the same time as they hit you, or if they hit you from behind, but they won't do as much damage as, of course, just running straight into one of the Darknuts. Once they are done, you'll grab the map and be able to see the large letter D that we have been exploring for the last little while. Now, you want to go back down and back through the hole in the wall that we had just blown up. The only real purpose for going to the right was to get that map. The only issue with this is we need to go back north, so we're going to have to manipulate the block again in order to go back to the north room. Once back in room with the keys, use a bomb to blow up the north wall, then head through. Here you're going to meet the guy who you have to pay either a heart or 50 rupees. Thankfully we have the 50 rupees right now, so we can just pay that and move on to the next room. Next room has only blue bubbles moving around, kind of weird that they're here. Push the block and then go through the passageway. On the opposite side, we're now one room away from the boss, and you can see the next room is filled with the red bubbles. Now it kind of makes sense why the last one before the passageway had the blue ones. In this room, of course, use the recorder, change Digdogger into his little tiny forms, and take him out. This one's a little bit tougher, I guess, than earlier because there is the 4 stone statues firing those fireballs at you, but once the Digdogger is dead, we pick up the next heart. We now have our second row of hearts, and we pick up the Triforce and have completed 4 of the 9 dungeons of the second quest. The thing is, you may have noticed that we didn't grab the item in the dungeon, the raft, which is the most important of the 2 items that are actually located here. I made a mistake by grabbing the Triforce instead of heading to the other path that you need to travel to in order to get the raft item. This is definitely one of the trickiest dungeons to figure this out on your own, and being a little trigger happy, I grabbed that Triforce before doing so. So now we're going back into the dungeon, and we're going to go grab the magic book. Now the magic book is completely optional. You may remember that it helps enhance the wand. Now we don't even have the wand yet, and we actually won't be getting the wand for a little bit of time. In fact, the dungeon that we get it in is the other one that I have to travel twice into. In this room, you want to destroy all the enemies, of course, and then push the block right by the entrance in order to get the staircase to appear that has the magic book. Once you have the magic book, you actually want to head north. This room is one of the 2 that you can actually get a bomb upgrade, but we're going to ignore that and just head and walk through the left wall. We are now in another room that we hadn't been into before, as you can tell by the locked door on the left side. Take out all the dark nuts. Once they are all done, we end up getting bombs to drop down, and we're going to need these bombs in just a bit. After accidentally going back through the right wall and having to see that text again, I now go through the correct path what I need to do, which is opening up that left side and going through the left door. Now I'm taking out all these dark nuts just to try to get some extra items. I'll end up unlocking the door, but that's not where we're actually going. Instead, you want to head north, and we're working our way back towards the Triforce Chamber. I'm just going to skip ahead as we have seen these rooms until I get back to where the Triforce was located. Once back in the Triforce Chamber, instead of where the Triforce was, we're going to now go above that and walk through the north wall. In here, you'll have some of the regular orange dark nuts, so nothing too challenging, but there are fireballs coming your way. Once you have killed them, we're going to head and equip the bombs. Here, we're going to have to battle with 3 more Dodongos. That's why we definitely need some bombs in our inventory. Once you have beaten all 3 of the Dodongos, the door will open above you. Go through the door, defeat all the enemies in this room. Once they are all dead, you want to push the block that I just did, and then go to the staircase. Down this staircase will be the raft item that we unfortunately didn't pick up our first time through. Okay, we are now finally done with this dungeon, but we have to work our way back out of the dungeon itself. So for the most part, you just want to follow the same path that we took in order to get here. Once we are back out of the dungeon itself, we can finally move on. Now, there is a couple of things we can do at this point, but instead of doing that, we're just going to take the raft item that we did get and head to the 5th dungeon, which is actually in the location of the 4th dungeon. If you want or need another big heart, you can go get one. The one on the far right side of the map that you had to use the raft to get to is in its same location as it was, along with the one just below that you have to use the ladder item in order to walk across a couple of piers. But since we don't have the ladder item yet, we don't get that until Dungeon 6, we're just going to wait until we complete that in order to go get those 2 hearts. So now, we're in Dungeon number 5. Dungeon number 5, the lizard dungeon in the first quest of the game, and the second one, well, it's the letter Z. The Wizzrobes are back, and they are back in full force, no doubt about that. In this room, instead of going down the staircase at first, you want to instead go through the left wall. You can use the candle if you want to, but it is a big open room filled with keys. Once they are all done, grab the key, then walk back through the walls. It's a much needed key that we pick up in this room. Here, just walk around and ignore the Wizzrobes and the bubbles and go north back through the door. Avoid the spikes if you possibly can that are coming at you, then go through the left door. Once over here, work your way. It'll take a little bit because, of course, bubbles are going to definitely get in your way, but take out all of the vials. Once they're done, we pick up the map, and now you can clearly see the letter Z. With that taken care of, we can now go back to the room with the Wizzrobes and that staircase, and actually head down the stairs this time. On the opposite side, you'll be in one of these spiral rooms, and we've seen one already, and you'll see a bunch more as we go through. You must defeat all the blue Wizzrobes, and because of this, it can be rather difficult. Not necessarily more so than throwing out their projectile, because they really won't do that, but it's more about them just moving around constantly through the walls, sometimes with you being unable to hit them. But if you kind of move in the pattern that I am, you'll be able to kind of sometimes trick them into moving in a pattern that will help you out. You also want to make sure that you push the block inwards towards the staircase instead of outwards that would block your path. In the next room, you'll have a Gohma, but we're not going to deal with that Gohma for sure. Instead, you want to head south and then down the next staircase. Once down here, you will get the bow. Well, unfortunately, I think we end up missing out on a key, and this ends up being crucial. We don't need to use the bow yet to take out the Gohma. We don't actually need the bow until level 6. So, walk your way around the spiralness, and then go back down through the passageway. Once you are back through and in that Wizzrobe room for the 3rd time so far, we're going to be going left back into the room that had the map earlier on. You can use your candle if you need to, or just kind of work your way through in order to get to the northern door. Here, Wizzrobes are abound, and you want to just kind of work your way around them, watching out for those red bubbles so they can still attack, and just go through the door. You don't have to take them out. The only problem with not dealing with them is that you may take a lot of hits, and they do a ton of damage. Head to the right in the next one, once again avoiding any of the Wizzrobes you can, and take out all the slime dudes. Once they are done, you'll get the compass. You can now see where that Triforce is located in the top left, of course, of the Z. Next up, we have to deal with a manhandler, so use those bombs wisely in order to take it out, and hopefully it does drop replacement bombs to refill your inventory. Next, another one of those spiral rooms. So, take out the keys, and if you're lucky enough, you can hit one of those lead keys and destroy them all, and then go through the staircase. This will warp us closer to the location of the Triforce itself. Once over here, take out the vials if you want to. We can grab some more bombs, thankfully. We already have plenty. And go to the next room where you have to battle a 3-headed Gleeok. Like I said, we're going to be fighting a couple of these, and we still have a 4-headed one to deal with later on. Once it's done, grab the large heart, the Triforce piece, and it's time to move on to dungeon number 6. But we definitely need to do a few things before we can complete 6. The 6th dungeon of the game is actually located in the graveyard in one of the random tombstones, and we have to use the recorder, or the whistle, in order to summon the staircase that we can go down into it. Thing about it is we need a couple of things. Number 1, we need the arrows. Number 2, I need a key. Because I didn't pick up one of the keys from earlier on, I'm going to end up purchasing a key, and because of this I will have to do some grinding in order to build up my rupee count. The only plus to this is I can also get another one of the large hearts while I'm working my way towards that dungeon and collecting those rupees. Go through the Lost Woods the same way that we have before by going up, left, down, left. Thankfully they didn't change that from the second quest, but you already saw me do this earlier on when we came to get that large heart at the beginning. Okay, here's actually the location of that 6th dungeon. It's actually in the tombstone I'm currently pushing on, summoning all the other guineas. Once you have a good amount of them on screen, or as many as possibly can spawn, you then want to take out the main guinea that will then destroy all the rest, since you can't actually hurt the others. Then you want to go around and collect all the rest of the rupees that have appeared. Unfortunately, if you summon more of them at this point, you won't be able to defeat them since you already killed the main one. Like I said, this is a decent way to gain some extra rupees, and I'll use this to my advantage to build that count up. Up this staircase and over to the right area, we're going to be going towards one of the other money games in the second quest, as well as an item a little bit later on. Over here to the right, what you want to do is have the bombs, and what you need to do is actually bomb this spot right here and go inside, and you'll get the money game. After winning and losing at the money game for about 10-15 minutes, I finally have gotten a string of luck and gotten enough rupees in order to get the amount I need to pick up the arrows. Up here, what you want to do is take out the enemy here and trying to get a little bit of extra, since I'm not quite at the goal I currently need, as I need 180 total rupees. And I really don't want to play the money game anymore and risk getting that number to drop again. Take out all the enemies on this screen, pick up any rupees they do drop, and then get out the recorder. Use it, and you'll find a staircase that will appear. Go down it, and you can get another large heart. With the large heart, we're now working towards that 6th dungeon again, but like I said, I do need to buy both the arrows and a key. Over here, equip the bombs, watching out for the enemies, and blow a hole in this wall right here. Down it is one of the many shops of the game. This one includes a key, the candle, and the big shield, but since we already have those other two, we're going to grab a key. You may be asking, well, aren't there keys in the next dungeon? The unfortunate thing about this whole thing is, without going in with at least one key, it's actually impossible to really continue. The reason for being is I need to grab the ladder item to advance in the dungeon. To get the ladder, I need a key. It's kind of a lose-lose. There are other keys I could have gotten from dungeons, but I would have to backtravel to those dungeons and get the ones I did miss. So it's honestly poor planning on my end, but thankfully there are enemies that can drop the rubies so we can buy it, and that since you can buy keys in the game, there is that way out of such situations, unlike other Zelda games in the series. Where I am at currently and near is actually near the location of Dungeon 9. It's located up that ladder, and to the left there is where that is. After grinding for some more rupees, I can finally buy the arrow that I need in order to defeat the Gohma, who ends up being the boss of Dungeon 6. Thankfully, the location for the shop that has the arrow is not too terribly far from the graveyard that I was already exploring. Now that we have that, head back to the spot that I talked about earlier that had that grave. Once you are back in the graveyard and back on this screen, take out the guinea, as I'll summon a few extra ones in order to possibly get some more hearts and some rupees, because I still do need more rupees. Like I mentioned earlier, I still have to purchase another one of those meat items. Also, when you use the arrows in the game, they do cost rupees. It's something that I forgot to mention during my first playthrough. Once the guinea is done, get out the recorder, and summon the staircase. Now we're finally in Dungeon 6, and like I said, because unfortunately of everything, I had to get that extra key, which made me not a huge fan of this dungeon. It's also one of the more tougher ones that we've dealt with thus far. Dungeon 6 of the second quest is kind of a weird shape. It's kind of like an upside down J. They kind of just did random patterns, it feels like, for Dungeon 6, 7, and 8. In this room, you can ignore the Wizzrobes, though I do take a lot of damage. Then, in the next room, once again, avoiding as many things as I can, head left. Here is where I needed that key. There's no other key that drops from enemies that I know of in any of the previous rooms. Walk across the walls themselves, and then you can go into the next room. Going around, you'll be able to avoid a lot of the enemies. Here, pick up that blue rupee and then push the left farthest block, and you'll reveal a staircase. Head down here, and this is the location of the ladder. Now we can finally move across those one little gap spaces that are over water or lava or whatever it happens to be. Now that we have the ladder, we're going to go back a couple of rooms. The first key that is available in this dungeon is actually located south of here. Unfortunately, to get it, you need a bridge in order to make it across, grab it, and then get back out of the room. Now that we have another key in our inventory, we're going to head back into this room and equip the bombs, and what you want to do is bomb the north wall. Just try to do your best to avoid the like-likes and the Wizzrobes and the bubbles. Another thing I failed to mention is that the like-likes don't eat your rings in this game, but they can eat your giant shield, which is extremely annoying because you'll have to rebuy the shield. That's one of the reasons why you can keep buying that big shield in the game. Kill the like-likes in this room and you will be granted access to the map. Then you just want to walk into the north wall and walk through. Here, I crossed a little bit of lava in order to be safe for a few seconds so I can just gather across to the other side. Here, a bunch of vials are jumping around, but we don't need to take them out and they're not going to drop anything. So, we move on to the next room where we will have to unfortunately take out all these Wizzrobes along with tons of projectiles. Not only their projectiles, but the projectiles from the stone statues. Thankfully, that large shield definitely comes in handy, and that's why I picked it up in the second quest, and I didn't pick it up in the first one, as there's a ton more of these types of situations to deal with. Thankfully, bombs do drop from the enemies, but we already have plenty, and then we can go through the right door that is now open. We can cross the single gap that is available, just watch out for the Wizzrobes, and then do so. Head down, you'll be in a room filled with bubbles. You want to push the left farthest block of the middle row, and that will reveal another one of those secret staircases. Once you are on that opposite side, take out all the keys in the room just so they really aren't an annoyance to you. Then use your bombs in order to blow up the south wall. That room that we had just crossed a few minutes ago, we're now on the opposite side so we can grab the key that we had previously seen. With that extra key, then go through the right door that was locked. Inside here, time to battle another two-headed Gleeok. And this one isn't the boss, though, for this dungeon. Thankfully, he's not too bad, and one thing that's great about the Gleeoks is most of the time, at least almost every time I kill them, they do drop a fairy, so you can replenish some of the health you needed. The next room, filled with red bubbles, so avoid them, push the block, and get to that staircase as fast as you can. Thankfully, we're at the end of the dungeon at this point, so what you want to do in the next room, you'll have a manhandler, so deal with it if you want to, or ignore it, and go through the next door, where you'll battle a Gohma. Shoot the Gohma 3 times directly in the eye while it's open, avoiding as many of the fireballs as you can, but once the Gohma goes down, grab the large heart, and the Triforce piece, and we have completed 6 of the dungeons. Now that we have both the ladder and the raft, it's time to get the other 2 heart pieces. We're going to use the recorder in order to get the tornado to appear to drive us closer to that location before trying to actually walk around there. Sometimes while using the recorder, you'll actually be teleported to one of the fairy fountains or fairy ponds in the game so you can replenish your health if it was low. Also interesting enough, it doesn't always take you to the locations of the dungeons in the second quest. In fact, it takes you mainly to the dungeons in the first quest. But when we do end up at the location of the third dungeon in the second one, aka the second one from first quest, yeah, confusing myself now even here, we want to then work our way towards that right coast that we got the extra hearts at. That puts us at the closest proximity to that. So once over here, you want to work your way around the water itself, and once you're on the screen, just walk up north on the little pier, and you will raft across. Once you raft back with the big heart now in your possession, watch out for the Octoroks here, go down 2 screens, walk across, and grab the next big heart. We now have all of the big hearts on the map. The only 2 hearts that we're currently missing are the dungeon hearts that we get from Dungeon 7 and Dungeon 8. Now that we have over 12 hearts, 14 actually, we're going to travel and grab the magical sword. Like I mentioned earlier, the magical sword's location has changed, unlike the white sword. Once over here, cross the river using the ladder, then go all the way up to the top. Watch out for the enemy on that screen, then on the next screen just keep going over, watching out for boulders, and you'll come to the arrow-shaped rocks. Push the front of the arrow itself, a staircase will appear, and we can grab the magical sword. With the magical sword, we now need to go to Dungeon 7, and the location for Dungeon 7 is a little bit tricky to find. Not only would you naturally be unable to probably find it without a little bit of help, without just throwing fire everywhere, you also have to walk onto the screen at a specific spot in order to get to it. Unfortunately for myself, I end up walking at that same spot from the wrong angle at first. What you need to do is burn the tree to the left of the set of 2. And you'll see what I mean once I work my way all the way back around the moblins in order to get back to that screen. And once I do so, I'll have to burn the bush, Then walk all the way back around in order to actually enter the dungeon. As you can see here, we use that candle, burn down the bush itself, and reveal the staircase to 7. Unlike the weird pattern of Dungeon 6 and the letters of the first 5, we now have weird spiral shape. We start in the lower left corner of the spiral and have to work our way around it. In this room, be sure to use your candle to light the way for yourself, and then if you're lucky, you'll have all the darkness that you need to fight on the right side, away from the bubbles, and you don't have to even deal with them. From there, as you can see, this is a room filled with guys. If you're lucky, you can get a stopwatch like I did, but if not, what you want to do is try to get yourself into a corner and lure one enemy at a time into where you are, and take that one out before adventuring on. After you have taken out all the enemies, push the block that I do, the third one in that second column, and that way you can get to the secret passage and get to the nether part of the dungeon. In here, you'll have some Pols Voices, more darkness. It's a big common theme, hasn't it? Fighting 2 different types of Darknuts as well as the Pols Voices. Either way, grab that key that they do end up dropping, and once they are done, you can push the left of the center blocks, and another staircase will appear. This one leads to the red candle. As you remember, the red candle is able to be used unlimited amount of times, unlike the blue one, which can only be used 1 time per screen, and then you have to go off screen and come back if you want to use it on the same one again. Especially makes looking for hidden bushes on the main map a real pain when you only have the blue candle. Kill the keys, go back through the passageway, and then continue on. Once you are back here, it doesn't matter, thankfully, if the bubble hits us at this point, because it's one of those flashing ones, it won't permanently paralyze ourselves. Then equip the bombs and take on the manhandler. You'll have to push the left block in order to open up the left and right doors once you have defeated the boss, or semi-boss at this point. Next room, more bubbles, ignore them, walk around the edge of the room and go to the door to the north. Next room, pretty much the exact same ordeal. Work your way around so that you can get to that top door. Here, Darknuts, stone statues. We should be pretty good at this by now. The only difficult part may come that when there's a lot of projectiles and the enemies, you may get a little bit of NES slowdown. Once they are all dead, grab the blue rupee that is left for you nicely, and head to that north door. Next room, more of them, but you can ignore these ones, thankfully. Equip the bow and take out the Goma. Once again, just 3 arrows right to the eye. As long as you have a couple of rupees, you'll be able to shoot. The Goma will drop, and you can go through the next door. Here, take out the keys while watching out for spikes on the tops and bottoms, and push the left block, just like we did before. The staircase will appear in the upper right corner, very much exactly the way it did the last time we did a room like this, and once again, another secret passageway. Try to conserve some of your health and just go through the north, and you will find yourself in another one of these 4-way crossways. Here, you're going to run into one of these guys who you have to use a heart or rupees to get by. This is where I'm going to sacrifice my heart in order to continue on, since I don't have any more rupees at this point. In the next room, you will have to take out all the Darknuts so that you can push a block. Once they're dead, push the same block we usually push in this room, and go through another secret passageway. Thankfully though, we are near the end of the dungeon. Once out of here, use one of the keys that we have left over, and just walk right through the door. In the next room, go ahead and use the bombs and take out the Darknuts if you want to help out with that, or just straight up attack them. This room is the exact same as the room we did earlier, except for the doors being in different locations. After they're all beat, move on to the next room and it's time to battle another Gleeok. Yep, this time it's the four-headed one. Just stab as many times and as quickly as you can. The fireballs are gonna hit you no matter what you end up doing. The key is just to take it out before it's able to take you out. Once it's defeated, you get a fairy, but more importantly, another big heart, and the 7th piece of the Triforce. There's only one left, and it's probably in my least favorite dungeon in the game. The location for the 8th and final dungeon is actually really tough to figure out. They do give you a hint from one of the old men that tells you that the location is actually south of the arrow. What he's talking about is it is technically one screen south of the large arrow formation of rocks where we got the magical sword earlier on. If you're wondering exactly where that is, well, it's right over here. When you make the turn, you want to go a couple of screens over, and then just take a few steps over and bomb this wall using the ladder to help you out. And there it is, the entrance to Dungeon 8. Definitely the toughest one to figure out if you don't know where you're going. Dungeon 8 is also going to be the only other dungeon that I have to travel into multiple times. We're doing 2 runs basically of the dungeon. One, where I'm going to go through now and beat the boss, get the Triforce piece, the heart, all that stuff. The next time I will come back in after having to do a little bit of grinding for money in order to get another piece of meat, so I can then travel through and get the 2 items for this dungeon. The skeleton key and the wand. Yep, we finally get the wand in this run in level 8, even though we picked up the magical book much earlier. While this dungeon is shaped like a spiral, very similarly to dungeon number 7, it has a ton of secret passageways that you need to take in order to maneuver your way through. Take out the Dig Dogger in this room and then go through this secret passageway. Like I said, we're heading straight to the boss, so if you're not interested in either the skeleton key or the wand, you can take this path to get right through to the boss. The only reason you may want to get that skeleton key is to help you out in the final dungeon of the game, though with a few extra keys that we already have, you may be able to get through that. In this room, take out all the ropes. Once you've done so, then you can pick up the items they drop, or just head straight south. You'll be able to walk right through the wall. Use the ladder to help you out, and go to the right, and you'll be in that same room we just appeared in after taking that staircase. Thankfully, we have that extra key with us, and we're able to use it. Take out all the Gorias in this room, and then push the block so you can enter another one of the secret staircases. Thankfully, they do drop some bombs, as there are Dodongos to deal with in just a little bit. Once through here, take out this enemy if you want to, or just walk right through the door that's locked right above you. Once in here, you'll battle 3 Dodongos, and yep, this is the boss for this dungeon. Now, of course, we've already fought Dodongos multiple times throughout the run, but with the stone statues, it does make it a tad bit tougher. Use either the normal straight-up strats, or you can use those specialty strats in order to take it out with single bombs, or to actually get bomb drops. Either way, once they're done, grab the big heart, which we now have every big heart in the game. Remember, I had to spend one in the previous dungeon to get through. And then grab the 8th and final piece of the Triforce. Okay, from here, I'm gonna go grind money. Where I'm gonna go grind money? Well, go to the money game, kill all the enemies, and all that good stuff. Once we've done so, we're gonna return back to the dungeon we were just in. With enough money, we're going to go up to this shop like we did earlier and buy the second piece of meat. Like I said, you don't have to do this unless you want the items that I previously mentioned that are inside of that dungeon. If you need it, you may also want to pick up bombs before heading back to the dungeon. Okay, once we're back inside, we have enough bombs that we need, as well as we have that other piece of meat. From where we started, we want to start heading north. Like I mentioned, there are lots of different passageways in this dungeon, and we have to take multiple different paths in order to get both items. We're going to start off, though, by going up straight all the way north until we get to that second Grumble Goria here, and feed him with a nice piece of meat. Once you've done so, just keep heading north and head into the next room. Use the candle if you want to help you out. You can take out the keys here as well in order to grab the compass item. Now, granted, the compass really isn't going to do us any good since we've already completed the dungeon, but I might as well pick it up at this point. Next up, beat the enemies, watching out for the stone statues firing at you, and go through the door that will open up to your left. We also get a much needed key, as we will need that in just a bit to help us through. Here, you'll have more of the same Gorias we just dealt with, but you need to defeat them in order to get to the next door. Here, you should know what to do by now. Get out the recorder, use it on the Dig Dogger, and then take him out. Once he's done, equip over to your bombs and then use a bomb on the left wall to create a hole so you can go through. Once in the next room, you're going to want to use your candle so that you can actually see the correct path. Watch out for the bubbles while doing so. You can actually go onto the water and stand there and avoid those bubbles as they keep going round and round and round. Open up the key door to your left, go through, and time for more Dodongos. Isn't it fun? Take out this next set of them and you'll be able to go through the next door. In here, be sure to grab the key if you want to, and be sure to also push the block, avoiding all the red bubbles as they keep moving around, and then head down the stairs. Once you have gone through, ignore the bubbles and just go through the locked door on your left side. That's why we had to pick up the key in the previous room. Be sure to push the block, then go down the staircase, and you will find the skeleton key, or the lying key as I used to always call it. With that in your inventory, of course, you can now unlock an unlimited amount of doors, as your key counter is now represented by the letter A. In case you're wondering, they kind of use that as a way to say that you have unlimited keys, but technically you have a number, I think, over 255, as that's the highest number that the game can register. Once the game goes above that, it starts using letters to represent the numbers. It's actually something similar that Mario on the NES also uses, as well as other NES games. When you get a certain amount of lives in the 1-up trick in the original Super Mario Bros., your counter will actually start going to letters. Either way, you want to back travel near the beginning of the dungeon. Once you have made it back to this room filled with all the red bubbles moving around, you want to push the left block and then go down the staircase. Once in the new area, take out the Goriyas if you want to, but what your real goal is walking straight through the wall. Then use the key in order to go through the next wall, and in this room be very careful of not only the bubbles, but the wall masters, and you will need to take out all the wall masters so that you can then push the block in order to get the staircase to appear. Once they're all gone, push the block, and grab the wand. With the wand now in our possession, you can ignore the Dodongos in this room and just head back down the staircase that we took to get here and go back out of the exit in order to continue on and go now, finally, to the last dungeon of the game. In order to get to Death Mountain from where we're currently located, we're basically just going to be heading left for a lot of it. One of the items I did not grab during this run, but is located somewhere differently than it was in the first quest, is the letter that you get from the old man in order to give the old woman so that you can purchase potions from her. If you're wondering where that item is, it actually is located one screen south of the location of Death Mountain in this run, or thereabouts. Unfortunately, I take a wrong turn here, as I actually should have stayed on the bottom path through the mountain before heading left. Going up here to where Death Mountain was located in the first quest just ends up leading me to a dead end. Now, back down this ladder, we are finally on the correct path. Watch out for the falling rocks, and try to conserve as much health as we can while going through there, even though there is a decent amount of tough enemies, just because we are getting ready for the final assault. Once you have made it to this screen, you definitely want to head up the ladder, as you can see, where it cuts off, and now you can head over to the left. Watch out for the enemies that are going to try to block your path, and maybe you'll get lucky and they'll drop a fairy for you. Once all the way over here, use your bomb to blow a hole in the wall right here, and enter dungeon number 9. That great music starts to kick in, and we're in the final dungeon. In the first quest of Legend of Zelda, the final dungeon was done in a shape of a skull, whereas in the second quest, it's actually done in the shape of Ganon's pig-like head. Just like with the first quest, there are 2 items to collect in the final dungeon. I will get the first one in the upper left corner, backtrack to the second one, and then pretty much return back to about where the first one was in order to get the last one. The only reason I'm doing this in the order I am is because the first item I'm grabbing is the red ring, which increases my defense. I'll do that before heading off into some of the more dangerous areas of the dungeon in order to grab the silver arrow, which is what of course is needed to finally kill Ganon. The final dungeon is definitely tricky, and it's definitely cryptic, trying to find all the different doors that you can bomb, keys that you need, and some doors, of course, you can just walk straight on through. The other big thing is the blocks that you have to randomly push. Here you're going to have to bomb a hole in the left wall, then walk back through so you can push the block again to head north. Like I said earlier on, there's a lot of rooms just like this in this dungeon. There's at least 3, if not 4 of them that we have to deal with. From the room I'm currently at, I'm going to go through, watching out for some of the enemies, especially the bubbles, and bomb a hole in the north door. Once here, just use the skeleton key, and this is the reason why we definitely want to get it to help us out, and go into this room. Wizrobes fly easily along the lava-based floor as we try to get to the north door. Here is the famous guy who says, go to the next room. Well, actually, there is two entrances here, one to the left and one to the right. The one that we want, though, is the one to the left. This is actually going towards, like I said, Ganon himself, or at least the secret passage to Ganon. But instead of dealing with that, we're instead going to go to another room and go down a staircase. If you're wondering, the room that we were just in, that's the room I was talking about with the staircase, but we actually want to walk through the wall and take out this enemy. Once it's done, push the block, go down, and pick up the final amount of defense, the red ring. Now that we have the red ring and our increased defense, we're gonna go to the opposite side of the dungeon, which is the location of the silver arrow. Follow the path that I am going to be taking throughout here, and you'll be able to get from where we just were to there with minimal problems. Well, I won't use the candle in this room. It's the exact same as the room, well, I'm about to enter. Another one of those ones with the center block that you have to push in the correct directions in order to access the different doors. From there, you want to head south, then push this block here in order to find another staircase. Basically, this staircase is actually taking us back towards the beginning of the dungeon. Without taking that staircase back to the beginning of the dungeon itself, it actually is really challenging to make it back, if not impossible, due to the locked doors that you're going to be running into. Unfortunately, enter the wrong door on the right. Where you really want to go is actually to the north. In here, kill the slimes, watch out for the spikes, and walk through the right wall when the opportunity presents itself. Once in the next room, this room is filled with keys. Ignore them, just keep on walking and go right through the right wall. Here you can take out the Wizrobes if you want to, but our main goal is actually going to be bombing the north wall. One of the benefits of taking them out with minimal problems is that they may drop some health items that we can replenish our health with. In the next room, you'll have to deal with one of the Patras. These are just as annoying as they were in the first quest, where you have to destroy their ring of little flies before you finally can attack the main fly in the center. Once it's done, you can pick up the map, and then you get to look at the glorious head that is Ganon. Walk through the left wall and battle the Wizrobes in this room, and then push the block. Go around, pick up the silver arrow, and now we have everything that we need to complete the game. We just have to make our way to Ganon himself. Walk through the north wall, and this way we can start heading back towards that area that we need to. You can take a staircase that's located here, and this will actually teleport you right near the beginning of the game. Now we just gotta pretty much follow the same path that we ended up taking in order to get back to where the red ring was located. Well, it may be easier to go the opposite way. The only reason, like I said, I went this way was just so I could have the red ring for better defense while traveling through the majority of the dungeon. While running through so many rooms in a row, it can be a little bit difficult to keep that health up, but that's why you definitely wanted to pick up all the hearts that we have done throughout the game. Once we finally make it back to this room, we're going to walk right through the wall, just like we did before. Especially if I can actually get that right spot. Try not to lose my shield to the like-likes. And finally, time to take down this Patra that we saw earlier. Trying to hit him half the time without taking damage is almost impossible. Usually I just kind of try to run in, take damage, and just keep swinging the sword till it finally drops. Once he is done, you can push the left block and head through the secret passage. Once over here, you want to go down a little bit, drop a bomb, and blow up the right wall. Next room, another Patra. If you haven't gotten enough of them already, it's time to deal with another one. But don't worry, we're at the end of the game after this. While I don't have a ton of health due to the 2 Patras in a row, it is time to battle Ganon himself once and for all. The battle is the exact same as it was the first time in the first quest. You need to just move around and attack him with the sword. Whenever you're able to get hits, after a handful of them with the magical sword, he will turn red, in which case you can then fire the arrow at him and finish him off. Grab the other large Triforce and then head through the door, take out the flames, and reunite with Princess Zelda. You can then sit back and enjoy the ending to The Legend of Zelda: The Second Quest. So there you guys have it, the original Legend of Zelda: The Second Quest. I hope you guys have enjoyed both the first and second. While this one is definitely a lot more challenging, and my path wasn't quite ideal, I still think I was able to get through it relatively well. Of course, the game is one of the most iconic of all time, and The Legend of Zelda will live on forever. Whether it was released on the Virtual Console, the Game Boy Advanced version with the NES Classics series, and even recently being a part of NES Remix. But with that, that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.